presentation with. All right, welcome everyone to the February Boise ITSM Talks meeting. It's a fun day today. It is 2/22/22 and Tuesday. If you haven't figured that out yet, I'm sure that's been part of some of the office banter that's been going on, at least from what I've seen. And kind of a fun day. Have some people that I know that have birthdays today, and that makes it fun a little bit as well. Welcome everyone to our meeting for February. I'm happy to be kicking these off again after a little bit of a hiatus to finish up the end of the year, and excited to get things going again. And I'm lining up some folks to continue these presentations forward, and we'll talk about it at the end to take a look at our schedule for carrying these forward and continue to have some really positive and productive meetings. And I'm looking forward to being able to help facilitate that. So I always want to thank everyone for being here, taking time out of your day to attend our meeting. For those of you that are here as first timers, which I don't think we have any yet, we might see some additional first timers make it in as we go through. Several of the RSVPs that we saw for the meeting included some first timers, and hopefully they'll be able to be here. So welcome to those of you, and also for folks that are attending outside of the Boise area. Even though this is Boise ITSM, we've been running this virtual now for about a year and a half. And at some point, I suspect we'll move back into a hybrid type of a situation. But for the meantime, definitely think it's been great to have had the opportunity, both from an attendee perspective as well as from a guest speaker perspective, to have folks from outside of the local area here too, and really appreciate everyone attending. I always start off our meetings with our why statement and talking about our vision and what we're trying to do with this group. This will be especially true today when we talk about continual improvement and the cultural characteristics around continual improvement. And again, I have some slides that I will share around that I've pulled from various places, but more importantly, we're here to try and fulfill a couple of different purposes. We want to have actionable information, things in each presentation that you can learn from, as well as encouraging your participation and sharing. And if anybody, again, is interested in talking about what's going on in their organization or delivering a presentation back to this group, we've had a lot of very senior and experienced level ITSM thought leaders participate and present in these meetings over the last several meetings, but I really want to continue to have some more practitioner level presentations as well. And a good example of that is Joe Macaluso, who's here, came in and gave a presentation last year that was really well done and really well received, and certainly encourage and would like to see more of those as well. Our why for starting the group is to inspire all of you to become better IT leaders and to fill the ITSM voids that we still have in many of our organizations. We know we still see that in our local community. And as I've gotten to know many of you that are outside of the community, we see a lot of the same challenges and the same opportunities, and definitely want to encourage the opportunity for us to continue to go back into our organizations with what we learn and what we share and be able to make those improvements. I'm going to set up some time, just since we do have a few new people, and also since it's been a while since we've held our meetings, to do some group introductions. So just really curious to know, as we lead into our discussion today, where we have opportunities to not only share who you are, what you do, a little bit about your organization, your ITSM background, but also, do you have a current initiative or a project or an area you're working on to improve? So it'll be interesting to hear from everyone around that. So I'm going to go ahead and just go based on the order I see on my screen and have everybody do a quick introduction. So Ryan, I see you up first. If you could go ahead, please.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Ryan. I worked with several people on the phone here and trained, I think, at least one person on the phone from an ITIL perspective. I had semi-retired over the past year, taking some time off after doing some work with Jeff and Joni for a client in Denver, and then had left that and completed my MBA program. So I was completely and totally burnt out mentally and physically. So it was good taking some time off over the past year, but yeah, it's time to re-engage. A lot of really, really good ITSM opportunities that are presenting themselves just on the Western states here. So just recently signed a project to start on Monday to provide the stand-up of several practices, namely service level management, continual improvement, portfolio management, supplier management, things like that for a customer in Oregon. So yeah, happy to see everyone, and it's good to kind of get back into the swing of things and get this stuff back in the front of my brain. So yeah, thanks for having me, Jeff.
Yep, very welcome, Ryan. Thank you for being here. Joni, have you next on my screen?
Well, hello, everybody. I also come with an ITSM background. I've worked closely with Jeff Jensen and Ryan, and I also know many of you on the call today. I currently work in the change management capacity for IT, the service management department specifically. And it's all around connecting the dots, making sure that, one thing is feeding into another, so that we have full circle from a life cycle perspective. And it's been really great working with the company I'm in now. I work for a credit union out of Utah, and it's a fantastic organization. Been deeply engaged in implementing their change management and making it more robust and feeding the entire life cycle. So that's where I'm coming from.
Do you have, Joni, a particular project or an area or initiative you're working on to improve right now as part of your scope?
Absolutely. We're working on increasing the CIs. So discovery of CIs and how those feed in, just kind of educating everyone on why CIs are important, what we're doing to gain and ascertain all of the CIs. That feeds into ServiceNow and the SAM and HAM background. It's the software asset management as well as hardware asset management. So huge projects going on in the background, tying everything together and again, connecting the dots. They also just recently launched a PMO, which has been fantastic because now we're looping it back to upper management and really trying to tie everything in together. So many efforts going on, many hands feeding hands. But that's basically where I've been engaged, is to help with understanding of CIs and asset tracking, as well as how that feeds into change management and why they care.
All right, terrific. Thanks a lot, Joni. Okay, next on my screen, I see Joe Macaluso. Joe, go ahead, please.
Sure. Yes, so my name's Joe. I'm a senior Agile coach at AT&T. My ITSM background, ITIL 4 managing professional and strategic leader. I've got experience in all the things that you could think of, DevOps, Kanban, Scrum, SAFe, et cetera, et cetera. I've been a practitioner of this stuff for over a decade now, and I love it. The current project I'm working on, the best way to articulate it would be to say that I am standing up Agile coaching as a service in my organization. And so I'm taking the ITIL 4 model, all the things that come with that, and I'm trying to build my own little mini business inside of AT&T. I work on a team of 3 other Agile coaches who report into me, and we're trying to figure out, what it is we do, what services we provide, and what outcomes we can generate to benefit the organization. And so I'm having a lot of fun experimenting with that and figuring it out.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Joe. Okay, next on my screen, I see Erica. Erica, go ahead, please.
Eric Larson. I'm a product manager at Clearwater Analytics. My background, I was Scrum Master certified and was a Scrum Master for about 4 or 5 years at my previous company. Now I'm just helping support just implementing agile processes and sprint processes within Clearwater. And then really the big thing I'm working on right now is I'm also the main Atlassian administrator. And so I'm working to migrate us to the cloud hosted instances of Atlassian tools. So as we're doing that, I'm really trying to emphasize thinking through how do we improve our processes and not move our mess and our bad ways of doing things and implementation of the tools to the new to the cloud. So That's really what I'm trying to think about. And we have to do service management. And so I'm really just hoping that we can figure out a better way to implement that tool, as I don't think we have done it very efficiently. So, yeah.
All right, terrific. Thank you, Erica. Glad you're here. Okay. My screen's shifting around a little bit as people are coming on and off camera. Next on my screen, I see Michael Case. Michael, go ahead, please.
Hey, Jeff, how's it going?
Well, how are you? Welcome.
Good. So my name is Michael Case. I'm the manager at Blue Cross of Idaho, manage the IT service desk as well as the ServiceNow team. And so I'm interested in process improvement and all things related to ITSM. So that's about it.
All right. Glad you made it. Welcome. Next up, I see Marshall Major. Marshall, welcome. Go ahead, please.
Hi, everybody. My name is Marshall Major. I'm with a company out of New Jersey called Gaming Laboratories, and I have offered to create a service desk and be responsible for ServiceNow. So, Michael, I hope you don't mind, but maybe we can go to lunch. But I took an ITIL Foundations class from Jeff just this last fall, and I'm looking forward to learning a lot about building a service desk. The company that I'm with has about 1,200 users and is global.
Thanks a lot, Marshall. Welcome. Next on my screen, I see Mafuzer. Mafuzer, welcome. Go ahead, please. Introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, folks. My name is Mafuzer Rahman, and I'm coming from the Canadian side of the border, and I work for PepsiCo. I am ITIL V3, probably Jeff, old days you trained me, and currently I'm working on the SAP side of the business. So basically, anything that goes through SAP and PepsiCo that goes through my team. The current process of we're working on automating some of the releases, changes, and pretty much owning the release pipeline. And that's one of the it's a daunting task. Over 4,000 applications that we support, and we're still probably 20% there in terms of automation.
All right, so a lot of improvement going on within your organization, no doubt. Awesome. Glad you could be here, Mafuzer.
Good to be here.
All right. Next on my list, I see Joanna. Joanna, go ahead, please.
Sure. Hi, guys. I'm Joanna Velez. My role is soon to be Senior Director of the InfoSec PMO and Process Improvement Org for T24/7 AI. They're out of California, and they're global. They do a bunch of AI and HI grouping, if you will. As far as my background to ITSM, I blame Jeff and Ryan for connecting and working through ITIL and just loving it. So that's how I got involved in it. But my background is truly more from a Lean Six Sigma perspective. And current projects and initiatives, there's quite a few of them that are going on. We just stood up and automated our GRC teams and their processes. And now we're looking at our SOC team and getting that implemented so that it's more SLA driven and more user friendly. And then we've had such really good impact internally with all the different teams that we're dealing with. Our team is now going to be focused on more of a global approach for the other business areas, so that we'll be working on onboarding and decomming and all kinds of fun stuff that touches all the IT orgs and HRs. So that's where I'm at.
All right, terrific. Thank you very much, Joanna. Glad you made it. Okay, next on my screen, I see Gretchen. Gretchen, welcome. Go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Hi, Jeff. Yes, my name is Gretchen, and I am currently working at HP. And as of this past January, last month, I am now a full-time employee, and I've taken on a new role as a client manager. And what that involves is managing the TCV and the life of managing my customer for the TCV and life of their contract, while improving processes internally to help better improve the customer's experience. Right now, there are many, many different websites and database systems that our customers use, and HP is in the process of trying to transition all of that into one. So I'll be part of that team. My background isn't as technical as most people. I don't have a technical agile or teal DevOps background, but I've been attending these meetings to help better understand the role of ITSM in my role in business operations, and it has definitely helped me better understand the technology available. So that's what I am doing.
All right, terrific. Glad you could make it, Gretchen.
Thank you. So am I.
All right.
It's been a while.
You bet. All right, thank you. Couple more to go. Looks like I have Jill on my screen next. Jill, go ahead and introduce yourself to the group, please. Welcome.
Hi everyone. This is Jill Zimmerman. I work for a company called Zenetics. I've been working with them since about 2007, and that's when I got into primarily ITIL. Along the way, I've picked up little pieces here and there. Certainly by attending these meetings is very helpful. Learning about Agile and DevOps and some of the other practices that go along and complement ITIL. But my biggest reason for attending today is I have two projects, one in Germany, one here in the US. And one of the biggest, and they're both government contracts, by the way. That's primarily where I do my work. We've done ITIL education with them, and both government and contract team are very excited about this idea of creating a culture of continual improvement. But my struggle is to get them past the excitement into the doing. I think we've all been in situations where when things start to get hard, people start going, oh, well, that's probably not as good of an idea as what I thought it was. So I'm here to just kind of learn and hear what other people might have experienced, take those ideas and tweak them for use in the government. And interestingly enough, both of these organizations, despite the fact that there's an ocean between them, share so many commonalities as far as what's going on within them. So it's just kind of interesting how I think we'll all probably find different commonalities as we talk about our various organizations, even though they might on the surface appear very different. So I'm excited to learn from everyone.
Terrific. Glad you made it. And yeah, definitely encourage you to learn and hear what other people have to say, but please do participate as well, Jill. It'd be great to hear some of your ideas and your experiences as well. So welcome. All right. And she's been bouncing around on my screen a lot. So Judy, if you're still out there, if you could introduce yourself to everyone, please.
Hi, Jeff. Hi, everyone. This is Judy Sanker, and I am a consultant and trainer, not only in IT service management, but in DevOps and Agile and project management, to name a few. And I've been doing this about 10 years now after I officially retired from Procter & Gamble in Cincinnati, Ohio. Go Bengals. And, I'm here to learn and to keep up to date with what's going on in the real world and to apply some of the skills, the techniques, the methods that I used back in the workplace at P&G, running global business services. So I was responsible for over 600 different services, ensuring that we continually met business and customers' expectations. And along with that, aligning with whatever those expectations were to provide good experiences. Today that's kind of the big word out in the industry is it's all about experiences and how does that play into IT service management? Well, we all know that it's a big part of that. So just continuing to learn and grow in these endeavors. Thanks, Jeff, for inviting me.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Judy. And I just to quickly dovetail on what you said, I think it's interesting to think about a continual improvement culture and how that shift and that focus on customer, user, employee experience fits into that, because having everybody focused around that aim and aligning around that can be a very positive way to move some of those ideas forward. So I appreciate you bringing that into our topic today. All right, I think
Thank you.
Yep, you bet. I think I got everybody as far as an introduction standpoint. I didn't miss anybody as far as I can see. So I'm just, like I said, trying to scan. I've got a couple of windows since I'm sharing, trying to see everybody. Yep, looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and kick off this presentation. And as we talk about continual improvement culture, I titled my presentation 2022, the year of continual improvement culture, for a reason. I think in my own context, as I've been going forward and have been a part of many different organizations, both as an employee and a leader, as well as a consultant, you get into a situation where you try and make changes and make improvements, and you know that just the environments that we're in from a digital technology perspective are constantly changing, and that rate of change is becoming faster and faster. Things are becoming more complex, and depending on the nature of your organization's calendar, sometimes we have things more from a fiscal year perspective versus a calendar year perspective. Sometimes those don't align necessarily, but if you think about starting out a new year, and I mentioned this in a little bit of my preview for our meeting today, we start off the year with great intentions, even in an individual, setting up our goals and objectives or our resolutions, so to speak, for a new year. And then we get into the year, and here we are on 2/22/22. How are we doing? Are we actually seeing some of those things that we're working on, especially if they're goals and objectives that are driven around improvement? Are they still moving forward at the level that you expected them to, or are they taking hold, or are we reverting back to our old ways of working or our old ways of doing things, and some of those habits that maybe are out there that we still need to work through? And a lot of the reasons why I think we revert back and that things sometimes aren't always successful is because of our organizational culture. And I thought it would be a fun meeting to get folks together and to walk through some content, but also really to have it more of an open session where folks can feel free to jump in and share some of their thoughts and feedback from what they see and what they find that's working well versus what's not working well in these spaces. And so I put together an agenda. There's a lot of different areas that we can talk about, and I don't want this to necessarily be set in stone and have me be doing all of the talking by any stretch. I will share some things that I gravitate to and that I think are important as we take a look at a continual improvement culture. But again, we look at continual improvement and understanding the why and defining culture and showing some examples. There's probably a lot of other examples that are out there that we can bring to the table and people can share as well. So we definitely want to encourage that as we go forward and work through our deck today. As many of you know, I start off a lot of my presentations with the golden circle from Simon Sinek and that focus on why. So as we take a look at continual improvement culture and the why we need to focus on that, I've given a few examples already of why I think that's important. And I'll open it up to the group. What is important to you when you think about the golden circle and starting with why? And if you think about culture and the things that need to happen, there's the Peter Drucker quote that's out there that I'm sure many of you heard that says, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And if we're trying to work forward into a new year with our goals and our objectives and our strategy, if they're not in alignment with our culture, if our culture is not the type of culture that's supportive of doing those things, ultimately we're not going to be successful. So I'll open it up. What comes to your mind as you think about starting with why and why we need to focus on culture if we're going to be successful from a continual improvement standpoint and being successful with aligning to the changes that are going on in our organizations? Does anybody have a thought on that they'd like to share?
Hey, Jeff, in my world, folks seem to be too busy to improve. And I think this is a problem with their culture where they value the They value cramming in as much work as they can in a given time box over taking the time to do the things that might make them deliver more value later over time. And so to solve this problem, I think you have to change the culture. I've heard somewhere that culture equals values plus behavior. And so if you value improvement, then you have to give the team the room to behave in such a way that they improve, and the culture of too busy to improve doesn't allow for that.
I like that. And I like your definition of culture, the behaviors and the value forming together. That's awesome. All right, great. Anyone else have a thought on why we need to focus on having a positive culture and being successful in doing so is in support of working on continual improvement?
So Jeff, from my opinion, one of the things that always works well when it comes to cultures, it needs to become ingrained. So a lot of times you'll see companies drive an initiative, and that's great. But once the initiative is over, it needs to be more grassroots to where everybody just has latched onto it and it becomes a part of the everyday. And that's where a lot of leaders in organizations, they just don't spend enough time on that, in making that acceptable and truly a part of business, if you will, as usual, versus it's something special that we have to tackle.
Yeah, I think that's right. And you get to the point, and we'll talk a little bit as we go forward, Joanna, around organizational change management, but the end state that you want to get to, which I think you do a really great job of describing, is it just becomes, this is the way we do things. And it's ingrained to the point to where people don't want to revert back to their old ways of working, and they will defend that new position. So having it get to that point culturally is a great indicator of knowing that you've made it to where you need to get to from that organizational change management perspective. Really good. All right. Any other thoughts as we go forward?
Yeah, Jeff, I think from a cultural perspective, starting with that why question, obviously, it's part of the continual improvement model of defining why and what the vision is. And there's a lot of tie back into business strategy from what the vision is for the business and where it's headed, and then how do you implement a lot of the improvements. And so it is from a tactical level, but it also operates from more of the strategic practice level as well, of understanding where we're headed, pushing it through the continuous improvement model, which you may have on the slides here. But yeah, it's kind of the starting point, defining your vision, your mission, your goals, and your objectives as to what type of improvement you want, and does it align to the business, and is there value in actually pushing through with a lot of those improvements.
Yeah, I'd echo what Joe and Joanna said. If it's not part of, like, you can have a vision and a mission statement of what you want to do, and I think that sometimes that falls into the how category. But that culture is kind of that ingrained like muscle memory for the organization, and you really have to embed it into your culture if you want to keep it alive and keep it going, build a community around it, and then foster it, and then you're going to have a more sustainable, comprehensive approach, right? Than if you do like a one shot and just try and say, we're going to do this because XYZ. That can fade away or change with leadership, but if it's part of your culture, that'll remain and be passed on to new employees as old employees step out. And so you can really foster a long-term continual improvement or culture of whatever it is that you're trying to do. So, and I agree with, I think it was Joe that said, we're too busy. We'll get to it later. You know what I mean? You're basically not prioritizing improvement into your culture. It's, what you're effectively doing in that sense.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that background noise was coming from you, Michael, or from somebody else. So I was just trying to check.
It's totally me. So I'm just going to mute when I'm not talking.
No problem. I just want to make sure everybody is able to hear you okay. So good. Yeah, I completely agree. And I think as you think about moving forward, we're going to talk about the ABC model coming up. I think that reminds me of that a little bit too, with what you're talking about, right? And how you have that linkage, kind of like what Ryan was talking about too, right? It has to be something that is really that core foundational piece, and starting with why to me is a great way to express that. So I appreciate those comments.
Yeah,
So, go ahead.
So I agree with what everyone has said. It's also, back to vision. It's engaging those folks that need to help drive the vision. You start with why, you start the conversations. What are the pain points? What's going on that's causing this? Why do we need to really think about changing our culture? And who's going to help us drive this forward? And so why is that huge step that you have to get through in order to get that drive forward.
Yep, absolutely. And making sure that everybody's aligned to that purpose or that future state that you're trying to get to. Yeah, terrific. Excellent. All right, so as we shift from why to how, one of the things that I always like to do is not to reinvent the wheel, but try and find some good examples that exist that are out there to help provide guidance of what could we look like in the future, and to try and help shape that directional piece that maybe we want to get to. And this is one of my favorite models that is out there that I know some of you have probably seen this already, and I've shared it with some of you, is this idea of the Westrum model, which this comes from the DevOps foundation training class that I teach. And this model is representative of how organizations process information in response to having some type of opportunity or some type of a problem that they're dealing with. And so as you take a look at these three different categories, you see pathological, which is power oriented, bureaucratic, which is rule oriented, and then where we're hopefully trying to get to, and maybe you've made some progress toward, is this idea of a generative culture or more performance oriented. So I won't take the time to read through all of these different aspects of each of the three categories, but I want everyone to just take a look at this. And again, maybe you've seen this before. It's an opportunity for you to think about, where are you at with your culture today? And are there things that you're maybe doing well? Are there things that you maybe want to move away from? And if you think about trying to ultimately shape your culture, you can take a look at some of these different types of characteristics or behaviors and say, is this something that I want to change? Is this something that I want to move away from? And then have that be part of the discussions that you're working through as part of improving. So does anybody have any reaction to taking a look at this model? Again, maybe some of you have seen it before. And where are you at with this in your organization? Do you see characteristics here that you maybe are recognizing that perhaps you want to work on moving away from? Does anybody have anything that they'd like to share around taking a look at this model and what it means to you, or where you see yourself?
So I think that we see ourselves in the generative performance more so than bureaucratic or pathological. But there's also a mix happening. So I wouldn't say that it really fits under any one of those at my organization. I think that there should be a healthy mix of all of them, really. To move things forward, you've not the pathological so much, but more bureaucratic and generative, to make sure that things are moving in the right direction.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about, because a lot of organizations, we talk about the goal or the ideal out there to try and flatten our organizations and have things be from the perspective of more self-organized teams where you're pushing decisions down to the lowest level possible and some of those characteristics. But most of our organizations that are out there still are very hierarchical, and so you can get into a little bit of a governance conversation when it comes to understanding your scope of control and how decisions are made, and what needs to happen in some cases where you can collaborate and come to consensus versus where you need to be able to move things forward. So I don't know if that fits in, Joni, with what you were talking about with what you were sharing there. Okay, and I see your chat, Michael. Bureaucratic primarily, but elements of some of the others. Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's due to the nature of, Blue Cross is an insurance carrier, so I don't know you just have a culture, back to that word, of bureaucracy and slow, fiscal conservatism. That could be like an Idaho thing maybe, or just being local, or we're heavily regulated. We deal with PHI, PII. And so, if you want something done, the best way to do it is to refer to, well, internal audit says we're being audited on this. So it's almost like an enforcement and a motivator. But I think like the executive level is trying to obviously become more generative, right? But I still see, like, maybe at individual management levels or layers, you see particular people that are more, I call it command and control. It's probably how they were raised. And they're kind of just like that pathological, like, do as I say because I said so sort of mindset. So but yeah, little like glimmers of generative, I think, in my mind. So yeah.
Got it. Okay, good. Thanks for that.
So, Michael, I just wanted to address what you had said about the command and control kind of way of thinking. There is an article by Peter Drucker called The Age of Social Transformation that talks about us moving from farm workers to factory workers and factory workers to knowledge workers. And we are taught, at least most of us in our K through 12 experience, we were taught to be factory workers. And so that's the generation of that command and control, do as I say, follow the checklist. I don't want you to think, I want you to just get out of my way. So, but what we're faced with is a whole need with applications and complexity and technology and the way that we work. People have to think. And so we have a command and control upbringing and a manufacturing way of thinking. But what we need people to be knowledge workers. So Jeff, how about can I upload into the chat, or do you want me to email you a copy of this article?
Yeah, please go ahead and do both if you wouldn't mind. I'd love to have an email, but also chat in so everybody has access to that.
I don't mind. And then I have a story to share about the cultural stuff after other people have had an opportunity to share.
Yeah, thank you, Marshall. Appreciate it. Anybody else have a thought or a comment on our Westrum model diagram?
Yeah. So, just to contribute, I feel like where I work, we're in the bureaucratic realm, and when I look at the headings of each of these columns, I feel like they indict our leadership. When I think of where power comes from, it comes from our leadership. Only the executives hold power, and power diminishes as you trickle down from there. When I think of where rules come from, our leadership are setting the rules. It's not the other way around. It's not the inmates running the asylum, right? And so when, in order to get to the generative model, that sort of leans on then our leadership having to change their behavior, right? This isn't the workers changing their behavior to meet demand, right? This is our leadership giving up power. This is our leadership saying that you set the rules, like, let me tell you what I want and you tell me how you're going to do it. And that takes a change of thought and a mindset that I don't think exists naturally in our human brains.
Yeah, agree. And well said. Yeah, interesting to think about it from that perspective of what it takes to shift from these different areas into being more generative. And you're right, we see that even just with Agile and DevOps ways of working, where in a lot of cases, the teams are being more self-directed and leadership has to try and adjust and figure out how they can play more of that transformational or more servant leader type of approach is appropriate. So I think, yeah, excellent, Joe. That fits in real well. All right. I have a couple of other examples to share real quickly, and I pulled a couple of these from the High Velocity IT ITIL 4 class. And I think this is an interesting one to take a look at, which are the key behavior patterns for high velocity IT. And you see these 5 different behavior patterns: accept ambiguity and uncertainty, trust and be trusted, continually raise the bar, making sure you have that focus on value with helping to get customers' jobs done, and then commit to continual learning, which I think fits in real well, Marshall, with your knowledge worker comment and the need to do that. So looking at this combination of guiding principles and key behavior patterns, and we'll talk about some guiding principles coming up here too. This is something that I gravitate to and think about quite a bit and really like, and how it's a good way to gauge how is your organization doing in each of these areas, and do any of these areas need to be brought into being a formal objective or being focused on more potentially. So I'll open it up again for the group. Feedback on these, especially if maybe you haven't seen these before. Does anybody have any reaction or anything that resonates with taking a look at these key behavior patterns? Open it up for any feedback or sharing. Those of you that are being quiet so far, please feel free to jump in too. I know everybody out here has got some strong opinions and some strong feedback and experiences out there.
Hey, Jeff, this is Jill. I like this slide because of what it represents for high velocity IT. But one of the things that I talk to organizations about a lot is that even if your customer and your market doesn't necessarily demand you to be high velocity, these right now, these are things that you should be thinking about doing, because at some point in time, you don't want to be caught on your heels, right? You don't, because if you're not being asked to be agile right now, you probably should be, and you just haven't been asked yet. So especially in organizations that I work with, and it was kind of interesting to hear the person from the insurance industry saying that they felt very heavily regulated. So I get that being in the government environment. But yeah, I think in organizations that are very heavily historically bureaucratic, especially those who have a reason like insurance or perhaps the Defense Department, those kinds of things, for them to grasp these ideas, it's very nice to think about them as the good idea fairy, but starting to introduce them early, even if there's not a high velocity driver currently, is a key for the consulting that I do.
Yeah, excellent. I completely agree. And that's actually why I pulled this in. And I'm glad you stated it that way, Jill, is I think regardless of whether your strategy is to necessarily be driven to go faster, a lot of nonprofit organizations, universities, government, that's not always necessarily the case. But at the same time, from a cultural perspective, if you're trying to continually improve, I think these things still are very important and very much resonate. And I appreciate you stating your feedback from that perspective. That was great. Good. Other thoughts on looking at these behavior patterns and how they fit into a culture of continual improvement?
I missed introductions, but this is Angela Hunsaker, and I'm also
welcome, Angela. Glad you could make it.
Thank you. Work with Michael, and what comes to mind when I look at this slide is actually with my day-to-day work. I help the ServiceNow platform, intake, metrics, business needs, all of that. And I think about the intake process and how we build trust with our, let's say, the business side. IT has been on ServiceNow for quite some time, but the business is a little bit newer to it. When we build trust, we provide them a service for this, this digital service that helps them with their work. Once they get in there, they start having ideas. They start asking more questions. They start asking for more services. They start saying, hey, I wonder if we could apply this platform to this job with our process and get a better outcome. And that velocity, we see that time and time again with teams. They come on very small and then they start growing because of the successes. And I think it's all foundational with that trust and taking that almost like white glove treatment at the beginning and saying, hey, let's go through this together. And I wouldn't say velocity. It's not high velocity by any means. I think that is the part that I would like. Maybe it feels high velocity, this learning a new platform, but sometimes it's not very fast. But just that it's this continuous improvement. They have success. They come back for more. They trust us. They trust our input. They are willing to ask us questions. They're willing to marry process with platform for a good outcome. And they don't expect everything through the process or everything through the platform because of that constant rapport and that constant, like almost like being a consultant.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I like the way you described that. And especially one thing that I've seen just as a corollary thought to that, Angela, is if you have that level of relationship and understanding and collaboration from the very beginning, as things change and as you need to continually improve, sometimes things will obviously run their course through their life cycle and their roadmap from a technology standpoint and end of life, but sometimes other things are going to become more important or more critical or get, as you're talking about, more adoption, more usage, and can shift from being just this little departmental thing like a little marketing website to something that becomes mission critical for the entire organization. And by doing those things that you're talking about, you're able to stay in touch and in phase with that and continue to support that as appropriate. So yeah, really, really well said.
I think about.
Go ahead, Michael.
Okay, Joni. I was building on what Marshall said, and then Jill. I think you almost have like, that transformation from factory worker to knowledge worker, or command and control to like servant leadership kind of philosophy, or moving into more agile. It's almost like a generational thing where I'm reading articles about the Great Resignation and about young people who are deciding that they want something else out of life besides just to go to work and make a living. They want to feel like they have a purpose and a meaning. And I think that this kind of goes into Jill's comment. It feels like whether you want to be agile as a company, your new hires, the people that you're hiring that are starting out in their career, are going to be agile, and they're going to be looking for different things than maybe what is already there. And so they're going to kind of drag you kicking and screaming, if you don't want to go, into more of an agile mindset, into that high velocity kind of frame of thought, I guess. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it's well said. I think just the generational and demographic aspects definitely are changing. And you also see that just from a consumer expectation, right? We want things immediately. We have that app mentality now, so to speak, right? Where we want things just instantly. And if we can't fulfill that, that's where we run into comparative issues as an IT organization sometimes too.
Yeah. And if you don't want to hire people, right, nowadays they're like, whatever, I'll go somewhere else. Because like our internal audit department is old school and won't hire remote workers. They've had a posting for a manager for like 4 months, and they're now, they suddenly come to the determination, maybe we need to open it up and have people be able to work remotely, because people are voting with their feet, right? They're going to companies that match their ideals and what they're looking for and looking for fulfillment. So that's why I say kicking and screaming, like you can either go voluntarily and lead the charge, or you can be brought along, by the folks changing the culture around you.
I think this also paints the picture, Jeff, to go back to the golden rules, right? You've got your why, you've got your how. This also feeds into that exponentially because of the fact that most organizations that I've been through or been to have an agile area, they have a DevOps area, but they're all siloed. And so this actually helps to blend it and say, okay, guys, we know that we have these work streams, if you will, and we're going to start blending them more so that we know what's happening over here, what's happening in the middle, what's happening on the other end. And it's being able to see that entire workflow and adding everyone into the mix. That's building on that trust, that's gaining the trust, and that functions across all generations. And that's what I've seen in our organization, and it's been fantastic helping them grow.
Awesome. Yeah, very, very good. All right, I'm going to go ahead and carry us forward. And then this is just not so much of a diagram. I don't like slides that are too wordy, but I couldn't figure out a better way to quickly put this in. So some of the other cultural considerations that come out of high velocity IT are listed here. And again, don't think that these necessarily need to be limited just to a high velocity type of circumstance that we're talking about. But I'm curious to know, as I give everyone a chance to take a look at these different cultural considerations, do you see any of these types of things being brought into your organization or being discussed? You see a lot of lean influence here. So Joanna, I'm thinking of you probably as I look at some of these things in particular, right? I'm curious if anybody has any feedback on any of these areas and how they fit into their ways of working and their ability to drive doing continual improvement.
I know for me, the design thinking is like, it's so beneficial for when you're trying to shift a culture and get people kind of like engaged to where it becomes embedded in what they want to do. And I mean that from the stance of if you're designing something with someone, right, changing their process or something, and you get them engaged and you involve all the handoffs, right, all the people that it involves, you give them the opportunity to be part of building it, if you will. They may not have their hands on the keys, but their opinion is heard, and that really matters a lot when you're trying to stand up a culture where you value people. And if they feel valued, then they take that forward with them, and they use that for how can I better serve, my handoff person, and that goes through your entire value chain to where you're delivering better value out to your clients. So it's something that it's the ripple effect. It truly does grow.
Yeah, excellent. And that reminds me too, Joanna, of a lot of the organizational change management pieces around that too, that go hand in hand. So yeah, excellent. Okay, anybody else have any thoughts on looking at any of these other cultural considerations? Are you familiar with these? Have you incorporated any of these? Even if you don't specifically, look at those as their own disciplines or practice areas, I have a feeling that many of you, as you read through these, are working toward these types of considerations culturally and looking at some of the behaviors that are indicated from these.
Hey, Jeff, this is Joe. I have fully adopted Toyota Kata. I'm a firm believer that this is something that is applicable to almost all facets of our lives, much less our work lives. When you consider just the physics of, if you will, of how we solve problems in terms of identifying problems, understanding their root cause, hypothesizing how we might solve them, testing that hypothesis, pouring concrete around proven hypotheses, et cetera. I mean, this is just the way problems are solved. You can't come up necessarily with another model that is much different than what I just described. Like I said, it's the physics of, it's just the way our universe presents us problems and how we can solve them. And so when you embrace that notion, and you apply it to your business life, and you start to think, well, we have a problem here. Our customers aren't happy. Well, why is that, right? How can we solve that? You start to go down the logical reasoning, the Socratic method, if you will. And it just, I can't think of another way to do it. Folks who don't apply the scientific thinking, the Toyota Kata, if you will, to their business, I think will struggle longer than folks who do, simply because they're bucking the way life is and how we have to go about it as human beings.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of that too, Joe, is embedded in the Deming cycle, the plan, do, check, act, to where you have, you're planning, and then you formalize your hypotheses, and then check to make sure that you are making progress, and then act, and then doing it all over again as part of a cycle to keep that momentum. So yeah, I agree with you.
That's just another manifestation of the scientific method. It's the different words to say the same thing, right? Yeah.
Yep. And the ITIL continual improvement model we'll take a look at, it's basically all based on the same ideas and principles as well. So yeah, it all is very closely related to each other for sure. All right, very good. So I'm going to do a quick shift into guiding principles. And again, if many of you have seen my presentations before, so I'm not going to spend quite as much time on this, but what you'll see is when we take a look at culture, having something to refer to from the standpoint of guiding principles, and being able to reflect as an organization on how are we behaving around these, or are there things that we can work on to put these in front of us as we're working through an improvement initiative or a project, that not only are we trying to improve a thing like a product or service, but are we also trying to improve through our objectives how well we can work together to drive better operational excellence, or to become more efficient and more effective at what we do and how we do it. So I really like guiding principles, and the concept of adopt and adapt, of course, is a part of this. We refer to best practices and different frameworks and methodologies as a way to benchmark and to help guide us, but also we need to make sure that we're adapting and making sure we do things that add value, and we're not just changing things because a framework tells us to. So we can integrate multiple methods. And what I've done in this deck, and I'll definitely be posting this out on the Meetup site and having everybody have access to this recording, is we can integrate multiple methods of working, so that, to Joni's point earlier, right, it's not just a siloed part of the organization that's working one way, but we can look at guiding principles as a way to break down those silos and to get everybody more aligned directionally with what we're trying to do. So in this deck, I've put together guiding principles for some of our primary frameworks from a service management perspective. And again, I'll just give everyone a few seconds to read through these. And then when we've had a chance to look at these, I'll ask for some reactions and for some feedback. So we start off with lean, give everyone a chance to read through those. And again, I suspect some of you are already familiar with some of these. Lean's really about flow and more of a customer pull system and looking at defining value streams and getting rid of waste. And then the Toyota Kata shows up with that pursuit of perfection. Agile Manifesto is a way to look at Agile as guiding principles is here. And again, I suspect many of you are familiar with those. And it's not that you don't do the things on the right, but it's an emphasis discussion and making sure we're biased toward responding to change and focusing from an outside in perspective on customers and value ultimately. And achievement of value really is the end outcome for all of these things. DevOps values and culture, of course, is a big part of DevOps. And that's where that Western model came from that I showed earlier, is from DevOps practices and that training class. So you see CALM's acronym showing up here. And then we bring the 3 ways from the Phoenix project into multiple classes, including ITIL 4 Foundation, which I think is a great way to tie into the continual improvement model and the things that we're trying to do with understanding flow. How long does it take us to do the work that we're doing? Can we go faster based on doing that, but also making sure we've got the feedback loops created and amplified. And then the experimentation and learning, which I think is the most important thing. We go out and practice what we do, we get better at it, we learn from it. And that's certainly important as we're trying to develop a continual improvement culture to be able to actually make the time to do those things and not just be interrupt driven and becoming definition of insanity where we want to improve, but we never make the time to actually change anything. Okay, and then ITIL 4 guiding principles. And again, I know many of you have been through ITIL Foundation training and have seen these now, but it's really good to come back and take a look at these. And again, if you can put these in front of your group as you're kicking off a project or an improvement initiative and talk about what are the things that at the end of this, if we want to define behaviors and define where we want to get to work better together, what are the things that are going to make the biggest difference? And you consider all of them together, but there's probably going to be a few of them in particular that if you focus on them and talk about how we're doing is not we're just doing, for example, a sprint review, what work did we get done, but we also should be doing sprint retrospectives if we're doing Scrum and Agile. So what are the things that we can do to get better at how we do our work as a team? And keeping these guiding principles in front of ourselves is a good way to do that. Joe, I see your chat. I should have said this earlier when we kicked things off. I did schedule this meeting to be an hour and a half just because I wanted to give people time to do introductions and to come back into the group again. But if anybody does have a hard stop here at the top of the hour, I definitely recognize and understand that. So I see Joe has to run. Does anybody else have a hard stop and need to run here at the top of the hour? If so, I definitely want to make sure I give you a chance to provide any additional comments or feedback. And we've got just a few more pieces to go through here. Okay, thanks, Gretchen. Appreciate you being here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and as we take a look at the different guiding principles, I'm going to transition into this next slide, which I think is a great way to encapsulate how we get to culture change. We can't just focus and come out as an objective and say, I'm going to change the culture. But it really is a progression, and this ABC model is something that I've learned and reflected on and utilized quite a bit, which is if we're really trying to change our culture, we have to look at our attitudes. Where do we have things that are going well that we want to positively reinforce versus where do we need to potentially call out and deal with attitudes that aren't taking us in the direction that we want to get to. And a lot of that, again, has to do with organizational change management practices. Those attitudes shape behavior, and then those behaviors over time form our culture, and the feedback loops and the influences that come back from that culture are obviously going to shape those attitudes and behaviors. And so this is really a closed loop type of a system within this ABC model. So as we take a look at guiding principles and we take a look at this model, I'll open it up to the group again. First of all, have any of you seen or utilized this model before? And what are your thoughts as far as even taking a look at some of those characteristics that you maybe see that you're trying to focus on as you're driving toward making improvement and making it happen and making it stick? Does anybody have any feedback or examples that they'd like to share?
A lot of times when it comes to attitude and behavior, sometimes you have to approach it, because there's always going to be somebody in the group who sees a problem for every solution that you have, right? And if you work on the language of people when they're in group sessions and take out the sting of, this is important to me because I want to own it and protect it, and turn it into more where you're truly creating accountability, it will help drive that attitude and behavior change to where, okay, I may be accountable for this, but I don't have to own it. I can help other people be successful with it, and change the language to get them to start seeing things that way. I think that will help a bit with culture.
So if I'm understanding that, Joanna, and just want to reflect it back, it's a little bit of accountability versus responsibility. Perhaps you can delegate some of that responsibility and have people be more involved in shaping the direction or having a say in the changes that are being done, again, being done with them versus to them, maybe. Is that a way to maybe reflect back what you were expressing there a little bit?
Sure, sorry. It's like, to me, accountability means that you're setting somebody up for success, whereas if you're territorial, you're going to automatically kind of stop a conversation because it's more focused on what you want out of it. So if you help people change their language when they're approaching design or process improvement or anything along those lines, it'll create that really good, strong structure for cultural change, right? And it'll call out the need to help others succeed, and that's a positive culture. So they become your positive change agents, if you will.
Yeah, great. Well said.
Something that I've noticed with attitudes is the power of explaining why. You can tell people information, you can tell them processes, and essentially this is the way we do it. But when you take the extra time to explain why we do something or why we don't do something, I feel like giving that opportunity for individuals to have an insight into the reasoning or the analysis of certain things opens them up to start championing your process or understanding, oh, okay, that totally makes sense, or why do you do it that way? It opens that conversation. I think about our release management process as I look at this, and it's been, I don't know, the last 84 years. Is that how long it's been, Michael? It feels like, 2 years to like shift this and get to where we are. And I feel like we've come so far. When I look back, it's like, it's not really come so far, but the understanding, the alignment, the collaboration, the attitude around the whole process has come so far. Having those conversations. Do you have input? I want to hear your input. I want to hear your pain points. I want to help you with this process. I will explain if I cannot help you with your pain point, but I'll explain why, what that is or what's going on. So I feel like when we take that step back, that we can essentially like help create these champions, right?
You bet. Yeah, I like that. Oh, go ahead, Michael, if you were going to say something.
I was just going to say, I've not seen this model before, but I've heard something that kind of fits into this model is that, the culture, a culture is basically all of the interactions that you have on a one-on-one basis that we all have with each other, and that kind of forms your culture. And I've seen initiatives at Blue Cross where they try and bring something in from the top down, and that's often the only way we're going to get this done is for have the CEO mandate it, and that can definitely work if you're high enough up and you have enough buy-in from leadership. But I think you can also be successful, like Angela said, with our release process for IT. The way we release code completely changed in June of 2020. We did a redo, and there's been a really big shift, and a lot of that was driven through one-on-one conversations, explaining the why to people, explaining the how, and just these little interactions. And so over time, people have acclimated and gotten used to it, and we've had a culture shift And I would think that's more of a ground up than a top down approach. And I think that kind of fits into this, where your attitude shapes your behavior, which forms your culture, which influences attitude, right? That all makes, like, it's like
one way or another.
something clicked into place for me, I guess, like, you know, hearing that before and seeing your models. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, great. Glad to hear
And
that.
Angela, too. Oh, sorry, Jeff, I'm going to step on you there. Angela, the book from Simon Sinek, Start With Why, is a fascinating deep dive into just the psychological mechanism of why it's important to start with why. And that's where the golden circle slide that Jeff started out with, that's where that's from. That's a fascinating read if you haven't read that book yet.
I haven't, but I would love to. I appreciate you calling that out. You know, like somebody, I don't know who said this before, but applying these principles not only in our professional lives, but I think of this as parenting as I navigate teenagers. And, you know, it's easy to give them an answer and just move on because of their attitude. But sometimes I feel like if I can't answer the why am I answering the way I am, you know? So it makes you stop and think on all levels.
I love that. Yeah, you can't get away with the because I said so when you have teenagers anymore. It doesn't work.
Does that work at work? Like, because
not really, but it especially doesn't work at that point. Gotta reserve that for when it's only absolutely necessary.
This also goes back to opening the doorways to conversation. Again, a lot of times culturally we get into our silos. Everybody gets heads down because we're all focused on hitting that end mark, right? Hitting that goal. But if we don't continuously discuss, talk, open the doorways to communication, it's going to break. You're going to break down and it's not going to be accomplished. So this is a huge, I guess, circular motion in looking at, did we check it? It's back to the plan, do, check, act, right? It's encompassing the entire picture, not just, oh, this is my path and I've got to go down this path. And to Joanne's point, it's, again, engaging with everybody, keeping everybody engaged, keeping everybody rolling in the same motion, but keeping the pathways to communication open.
You bet. Yeah,
it's really so important to have that element of, because you can feel pretty vulnerable, you know, if you're going to ask for something or challenge an idea or present a new idea, if there's not that culture of acceptance or openness, or that's going to, you know, push a timeline. I agree. Like, you definitely have to keep that constant contact or that attitude almost, so those vulnerabilities are diminished and people can feel confident to present themselves and their ideas.
Absolutely. Yep. And then again, if you're doing a good job from an OCM perspective, Angela, you recognize those things out front and you're making that part of your execution plan, right? You're intentionally going out and making sure that those steps are being taken care of and that you're not doing a ready, fire, aim type of a scenario. And I think that's where we get ourselves into trouble a lot of times, because we have to get to the end fast and we aren't doing the things that ultimately lead to that rework or that re-engagement of effort because it didn't go well. And why didn't it go well? Well, because we aren't learning how to do this better. We're not developing that as a capability. And I think that's a definite takeaway from my perspective too. All right, excellent conversation. I'm learning from all of you as we're walking through these, and that's the whole point, is to have everyone share and to hear each other's thoughts and inputs and feedback and to learn from each other. I'm going to move us forward into the continual improvement model from ITIL 4. So this really is based on Toyota Kata, on plan, do, check, and act. It's a great model. If you haven't had the opportunity to incorporate this as we take a look at driving the cultural pieces of continual improvement, if you follow this model and actually utilize it and don't skip steps, especially in a lot of cases, we can skip these first two steps and we might get into more of the where do we want to be with the detailed planning, but we aren't putting the right things in context and we're not really understanding where we are. So the opportunity to align our work to our larger strategic vision and mission goals, objectives for our business, not just for us as IT, to understand and be able to measure where are we today with baselining, gives us that opportunity to then move forward and to plan and then do the work, but then follow up as we take action to evaluate, to then check and then learn from what we did to show the full quantifiable benefits of doing the improvement and then build momentum. And keeping the momentum going is a huge part of building a continual improvement culture. So there's a few different aspects that I want to emphasize as we discuss this, which is one, just incorporating this model into your improvements, having a continual improvement register or a backlog of improvements that you're encouraging folks to populate. And I know several of you have worked with me to do this, is you can then practice it, you learn from it, you carry it forward, you get things done and show the value. And the argument or the ability to say that we don't have time to do this will start to go away. You'll start to see people's time getting freed up because you're getting rid of waste, or you're becoming more efficient or more effective in the work that you're doing. And this becomes something that can build muscle memory, where we're not just planning and doing all the time, but we are actually checking and acting. We're stepping back and evaluating. We're learning from it. And then that over time changes attitudes and changes behaviors and changes culture, and can lead to that culture of continual improvement, which is what we all want to get to. So this model, if you aren't using it today, and if you aren't encouraging your peers and your team members to log improvement opportunities, that's the first step. And then just go practice it. Go incorporate this into your project kickoff templates. If you're doing a project that's driven around improvement, bring in some of the guiding principles. And one thing that I'll say real quick, and I want to get everyone's feedback, is all of these things don't stand alone. Everything that we're talking about, plus everything else beyond this, all fits together. When we talk about governance, when we talk about continual improvement, when we talk about organizational change management, when we talk about some of the communication and the collaboration pieces and the cultural pieces of breaking down silos and some of all of that fitting together, you have to look at that as a holistic system and not just, I'm going to do this one little thing. You can practice doing the one little thing and get better at it, but ultimately it's got to fit back into the bigger picture, which is what I like about this model, is it does bring you back. And even if you're iterating through this on a longer term piece, you can phase it into smaller iterations and build momentum and show value. And I've seen that type of approach work really well also. So I know some of you are very familiar with this model. I don't know, Ryan Holzer, if you want to add anything from your perspective on this one, or Joni or anyone else, but Mafuzer, you've been pretty quiet so far. I know you've probably used this model in some of your works. Anybody have anything they want to contribute to feedback with driving continual improvement, just even having some type of framework, whether it's this or something else, to work people through?
I think the cool thing about this model, Jeff, is it can be used tactically or strategically. It doesn't matter the initiative. It's good alignment, starting with vision, all the way through to keeping the momentum going. And I think that's the most challenging part, is how do we keep the momentum going? Whether it is small process improvements or a service improvement plan that you're working on, this model is, I mean, I have it printed out and posted. I reference it, so often. And also from the ITIL 4 perspective of how they tied in, for the various stages, doing the baseline measurements, establishing those measurable targets, that is just icing on the cake on how effective and efficient this thing can be used for. So yeah, I'm glad you included this slide. This is a really important component of CI.
I reference this a lot, Jeff, when talking with the different teams that I engage with, not just from the perspective of change management, but from the holistic, talking with the business, talking with upper management, all the way through project management and down into the teams. It's applicable everywhere within every area. And so again, this goes back to communication. Keeping the lines of communication open and continuing to talk about the vision and where we're going with it.
Excellent. And I'm happy to hear that you're utilizing it in what you're doing, Joni. And again, opportunities to look at it from a process or a practice point of view, certainly applicable, but can be very applicable across all levels of strategic, tactical, and operational. And in fact, if any of you have visibility or have seen the ITIL 4 Digital and IT Strategy publication or course, that morphed and shaped to where the continual improvement model ended up being the basis for the outline of that whole book, and that whole content is to look at it from a strategic perspective as well. So it's kind of interesting to see how this isn't just a tactical or operational model, but can really be used to drive digital transformation and more of the strategy pieces as well, which I think is really exciting. Anyone else have anything they want to add or contribute around the continual improvement model? Maybe for some of you, you've seen this in foundation class, and I don't know if everyone's had a chance to carry it forward yet, but definitely interested to see if anybody has any thoughts or perspective that they'd like to share. Like I said, Mufuzzer, you've been kind of quiet so far. Do you want to add anything from your perspective of continual improvement and how you're maybe utilizing this or some of the other models that are out there?
Hey Jeff, so sorry, I got sidetracked, but definitely, as Michael and Ryan said, I would say that I printed this out. I have it in a big poster. The biggest challenge for us, keeping that KPI, and when you work for a big organization, maintaining that KPI is harder than you would even think. And this is where we struggle, especially when we have many cultural challenges. Remember, I have teams all across the globe, and not only cultural challenges that we run into geopolitical issues. Right now, we're dealing with something very unique that, you all probably think about the political issue in Russia, right? And we have our plans that's operating there, and some of the stuff that we're securing, and this is where we're planning 90 days ahead and how we plan to operate in that kind of environment for the next 90 days.
Yeah, I can imagine. So a lot of business continuity types of discussions going on, I would suspect, Mufuzzer, if I'm
absolutely
thinking about that right. Yeah, that makes sense. Good. Joanna, I see your chat. So I have heard of the Hoshin matrix. Do you want to talk about that a little bit real quick to everyone?
Oh, it's a really great tool, and it covers every single piece of this model. So it helps kind of have those conversations at the leadership level, and then gives you the ability to draw it across into the teams that actually have hands-on keys and stuff. So it's very functional. It moves very well, and it helps kind of consolidate and keep everything together. So whether you're an agile house or a waterfall house, which not many are anymore, but you can really tie everything out that way. So it's something, if you're interested, I can share some templates with you later on if you want, and you can always, if you want something later in a session.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. I'd love to learn more. Appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, let's make sure we follow up and do that. And thanks. I'm sure people can Google it and look it up just based on you chatting it in. But yeah, let's have a follow-up discussion on that. I kind of want to do a part 2 of this presentation at some point, just because I think that while we talk about things from a cultural perspective, I think equally important is to circle back and to talk about things a little bit from a direction and a governance perspective around this too. So more to come, in, at least in my mind, on where I think we can take this. But today's been awesome. So again, I appreciate everyone being here. I have some time for Q&A. I know we're running into our last 10 minutes. Real quick, I always try and put up for ITSM Academy the upcoming training opportunities that are out there. A lot of stuff, although this does not look like my slide updated. That's not right. So dang it. Maybe I didn't save the right version. I will update this and send it out. There are several opportunities coming out. I know I updated this. So for some reason it didn't save right or didn't stick. So I apologize. I will get that fixed. This is all old content. I apologize, but I will, if you go to itsmacademy.com, their training calendar is out there and I will get this updated. There are a couple classes coming up with Foundation as well as with Drive Stakeholder Value that I'm going to be teaching coming up in May. So I want to get that in front of everyone. This slide does look like it updated. I'm excited about our next meeting. And so one of the things I want to make sure I announce is I don't have this 100% finalized, but we're looking at a couple of dates for next month to work around spring break schedule, either the 16th, which is a Wednesday, or Tuesday, the 29th. I'm in a discussion and have been working to get a hold of Roy Atkinson, who's one of the big thought leaders and a big part of the Help Desk Institute, and wealth of information, a huge thought leader in our industry. And so I'm excited to be talking to him. And I will announce by Friday what the date will be for our next meeting and get that out to everyone and post it on Meetup and on LinkedIn shortly. I will have the previous recording of this meeting out on my YouTube channel. Want to encourage everyone to support our other complementary frameworks and meetups that are out in the Treasure Valley. We have the Treasure Valley Agile community that meets monthly. We have Project Management Institute monthly chapter meetings. Greg Sanker, who's a friend of mine, who is the author of the Change Enablement Practice Guide for ITIL4, has a blog and YouTube channel called Keep the Learning On. There's a lot of great recordings and great discussions and sessions that Roy Atkins is actually a part of, and that's part of how I met him, was through Craig. So a lot of good stuff out there to take advantage of, and encourage you to continue to go on your continual improvement and learning journey. And as Marshall mentioned, continue to develop yourself as a knowledge worker. I always come back to that and like that expression. So I'll go back here, and just as we wrap up, any final questions or comments or feedback on our session for today?
Jeff, this is the first time for me. I really learned a lot from all of you, and I feel all of you are the vets here. I am looking forward for the future session.
All right, I'm glad you could make it, Mafuza. Great to have you.
Thank you.
You bet. Any other questions, comments, feedback?
No, just wanted to thank you for getting this organized, Jeff, and putting it on, starting back up for the year. I always enjoy these meetings, so they're very engaging and enlightening. So thanks.
I appreciate that.
I'm glad to see.
Appreciate the support.
All the yeah. I see several faces, Joanna and Joni and Angela. It's great seeing everybody. So hope you guys are doing well these days, and Ryan as well.
Yeah, I second what Ryan's saying. This is nice that you're getting it started back up. Keeps the juices flowing and keeps us actively thinking about where we need to go.
All right, terrific. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and call it a day. Again, I appreciate everyone being here. I will get this presentation and the link to the recording posted here in the next day or so, and I'll get the announcement and confirm speaker arrangements and date and time for next month's meeting. I look forward to seeing all of you there, and please continue. I'd appreciate all of your help to get the word out and to build the momentum around continuing to grow our audience and being able to contribute and give back to our joint ITSM and IT communities. So if you guys can spread the word and bring a friend to our next one, we'll continue to grow this and continue to have more opportunities for speakers and discussion. And again, if any of you are interested in presenting on a particular topic, again, I'd love to have that practitioner level view too. If we have things that are going well in your organization or things that you've learned, or I talked to Ryan Holzer this morning, he's been out on the job search and just learning what's going on out there in the industry and coming back in and starting something up. So I think that that's a great opportunity to have that perspective as well here in a future meeting. So great to see everyone. Thank you, Marshall. I see your chat. Thank you. Thanks, Joni. Thanks, Mafuza. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate all of you being here. Jill, Angela, great to see you. And we'll go ahead and call it a meeting. I'll go ahead and stop the recording. And we'll see everyone.